Hello YouTube, Trademark Kill here, and today we are hanging with Crozz Storm.
Yo.
Now we are playing a little bit of RWBY Grim Eclipse. We don't necessarily like this game, but that's a topic for another video. But we are actually talking about something RWBY related, which is our kind of hopes for Volume 6, and in turn, some of the things we didn't like about the recent volumes. But let's get right into it. What's the first thing on our plate there, Crozz?
The first thing we're hoping for Volume 6 is better fight pacing.
Yeah, and so like there's a lot of stiffness in a lot of things that RWBY Volume 5 and 4 did that we're hoping this gets cleaned up. And I kind of want to make an analogy here. RWBY Volume 4 and 5, as opposed to the other episodes. So the other volumes were like you had a kid, and it's growing up, and you think it's gonna, and it grows up, and you think it's gonna grow up to be, a with a good degree, a good job in that kid's field, and a decent paying job. When all it turns out to be is that your kid is now a 20-something without a degree and is a heroin addict. That's kind of what the fight direction feels like in the recent RWBY volumes, where some of it's just so stiff and nonsensical. It doesn't feel like anything meshes other than for one or two scenes in the recent volumes.
Yeah, like you're saying, your kid's growing up, he's getting perfect straight A's, and then he's just like dropping the ball. One scene I love to pull up I hate to pull up when it comes to this volume is Volume 5 is that one scene where Yang and Mercury are fighting, but Weiss of course gets stabbed, and then they just stop. They just like, no, you're in the middle of a fight. Why are you stopping? Or if anything, Mercury, you should be like punching her across the face. Not, hey, no, everyone stop to look at this thing. Okay, continue.
Yeah, and then there's also some stiffness, some stop and start stuff like that. And that's just not something that, when we came up from RWBY Volume 1 and Volume 2, I still remember the idea of, the fight scene with the Nevermore in Volume 1 where RWBY decapitates it, and thinking, what the hell is this show and where has this been my entire life? Because the things that were off-putting about it, you knew were going to get fixed with time, but it was also kind of endearing and charming in a way when you saw those things. And it just felt like the things that are now that are now what's wrong with it, the things that you thought were going to be fixed, are either worse or have now turned into some horrible cliche that you'd think you'd see in a parody almost of a show. And I'm not really sure, more the fluid action of the days of Monty Ohm are kind of behind us, even though we see semblances in that with the gunchuck scene in Volume 5 with Sun and Ilya, and even the crow, or sorry, not the Raven and Cinder fight. Those scenes are so fluid and well done, but then you have every other fight or every two fights that are just lackluster.
Yeah, they have to stop in the middle of fights. I remember that same scene from Volume 1 as well. The only time that they actually slowed down and stopped during that fight was like the 2 seconds where RWBY and Weiss have a small chat where it's like, you think you can make the shot? Can I? And there's a small pause there. Can you? Of course I can. Yes, that's like... There's a way to pace fight. There's a way to pause fights that doesn't harm the action, and they need to learn to do that better instead of, okay, let's pause the fight to talk for a good 5 minutes while no one swings their sword. You promise you won't swing your sword? Yeah, I won't swing if you don't swing, bro. No. You're fighting. You just kick their ass and tell them why you're kicking their ass in the middle of kicking their ass.
Yeah, and as we said, the Yang situation when Weiss got stabbed in Volume 5, that could have been that if Mercury had punched Yang, that entire situation and that entire point doesn't exist because the fight makes sense. But it feels like sometimes they're trying to throw character development in and story into the fight, and they're doing it in a very bad way. That's taking away from both, not just the fight or not just the story, but it's taken away from both, and that's incredibly dangerous to do. And in some cases, there's some simple stuff they could do that would fix it. But hopefully they can get back on track with that.
Yeah, I really hope they do.
Do you have any last thoughts on that?
No, that's about it there. But now to our second thing. The second thing I hope for the next volume, it probably ties into this a bit, is I hope they start off with a fight scene this time. The volume 5 is the only volume so far not to have a fight scene during like the first episode. And while I get that they want to take time to build story and background information and show us Haven for the first time, I still wish it would have started off with a fight scene. Even if it was something small, like maybe one thing I still really want to see in RWBY is a fight scene between any two characters of our main cast. Like
a serious one too. Like
a serious one where it doesn't even have to be that serious for me. It just has to be like training.
Yeah, and I think that the fight scenes would always set a good pace for the rest of the show, and it did feel like something was missing at Volume 5 without starting off with that fight scene. People do. I do want to bring this up. People classify the bar fight with the lieutenant, where Yang punched him. That was a comic relief. That was poorly done comic relief, but that was just comic relief for the sake of comic relief, and that kind of that kind of leads. I mean, are you good with do you have any other thoughts?
No, you're right. Like okay, my thing with RWBY is I could take any volumes of 1 through 4, show you the first episode, and get you hooked on RWBY. I can't do that with the first episode of Volume 5. I can't show someone the episode of Volume 5 and them go, oh, this is a show with action in it? Are you sure?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of shows that start with that with a fight scene of some sort, and
yeah, it shows you what the show's about, and they just didn't. They dropped the ball this time, and I'm hoping they really pick it back up and blow me out of the water. Like, if you really want to say sorry for Volume 5, make the first fight scene as epic as the Raven versus Cinder fight scene. Make it that great if you really want to tell me sorry personally.
Yeah, and I guess this kind of lends into our first point, but there a lot of the good fight, like the Raven versus Cinder or the Ilya and Sun fight, were inspired by Monty. They were the fights that I guess Miles Luna decided to let the animators go on and have a blast. And it worked out. I'm worried that there might be some restrictions in place for these animators to not be able to do that, which not only hinders, as we were saying with the fight scene in the first episode, being almost iconic to the series, but it also might hinder the quality of that. So people who might be looking for that RWBY clip to really see if it's interesting or not.
We missed this trophy, didn't we? Fuck.
Yeah.
Can we get back up?
Really.
Okay.
But it stops them from really finding RWBY interesting because of that lack of fight scene. But I'm hoping they get that back on track because that's an iconic. The fight scenes in the first episodes of RWBY are really iconic.
Yeah, it feels like it's age old. Oh, okay, we could get back around here. But it feels like it's like one of those things that they always do, and for whatever reason they just stopped that trope this time around, and feels really bad to say that. Okay, we get on to our last point here, and our last point that we really want to get on with, that we really hope that the next volume shows, is more ramification.
Yeah, so we have Yang, who's showing signs of PTSD, but during the final fight, it's gone and she's free to fight without anything. Where she's fighting Mercury, there should be an evolution to that. There should be where she starts getting destroyed because she's reacting out of anger, not out of training.
Got it.
So that those things should exist. And ramifications like we can go back to Volume 2 where Velvet says we need to, there's so many Grimm on our away mission. Well, that should have made Grimm more scary, but it really didn't. Oh, sorry about that. I nearly choked on myself.
Don't do that, man. We
But
need
yeah.
you around.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on the ramifications not really being evident when convenient, it seems like?
Yeah, like one thing that I know they had to end the volume, but at the end of the volume where we go through the half of the volume where Yang is still really mad at Blake. Yeah, it's Dr. Milo Ruby. Yeah, Yang's still really mad at Blake, and then at the end of the volume, it's like, oh, we're finally together, team, blah blah blah. And Yang just hugs them all out, a team. Even if you could show me like the slightest bit that Yang is not entirely happy that Blake is back after
dumping her off with with a lost arm.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, you didn't show me then. But my hope is that next volume they actually show some ramifications of that. They just show Yang treating Blake slightly different. Like, I don't know. They start off with a fight scene like I said like I really wish they would. And when Yang comes to bring them drinks or whatever after the big fight, you see her bring a bottle of water for. Why is a bottle of water for Ruby and there's no bottle of water for Blake? Just something small like that. Like, yeah. Fuck you.
Yeah, or like what I'll say is like, shit, I lost my train of thought. Like, ending things, with intensity. Like, I really wish that they would have had a situation where, at the very least, Blake looked at Yang and said, "I'm sorry," and said, "You're not sorry, not yet," or "I'm not going to forgive you, not now." And brought the next volume some intensity that they needed. Because right now, all of it has ended happily or on a somber note. And Volume 5 wasn't that much different. So I'm hoping they can end it, with using ramifications. Small cliffhanger, but they can tie in the ramifications to, or the need for ramifications to that by introducing ramifications at the very least at the end of the series to show that there's consequence. Because like Tyrion, with Tyrion and Cinder, you at least got a sense of consequence when Salem kind of dropped Tyrion after he failed to capture Ruby, and you kind of get a sense of that. You don't get really a sense of that when it comes to the main characters. So it's almost like these main characters have no consequence or ramifications for their actions, which is something they really need to fix.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's about. Is that about all the time we have? What time?
We said it for 18 minutes. We are 4 minutes left, so we can end it here. And then before we go off too much, and any additional thoughts, we'll bring up. I'm going to RTX, so we can definitely expect to see some more fun stuff after RTX. And especially when those trailers leak from the RWBY panels, because we know that's gonna happen.
One of the reasons we're playing Grim Eclipse now is so we can get a feel of the game, so we can talk about what we want to see in Grim Eclipse later. But yeah, I have hope. Look, I still have hope for RWBY. I still love RWBY as a show, and I still feel like it can still get back on track even after going off the rails, so to speak.
Me too, but I do think that at least for me and for quite a few other community members, what they've lost was so dear to many of us in terms of the quality of the fights and such, that it is the last straw. Volume 6 will be the last straw for RWBY, for many of us. So they do need to kind of realize that and correct something.
Yeah, it's now or never, and Volume 6 will tell us if RWBY's going to be if Ruby's going to get back on track, or if Ruby's just gonna be off the rails for a while.
Yeah. But yeah, as I said, we also have Grimaclip stuff coming up, so you guys will hear more of our Ruby rants later. But I think we stopped beating this dead horse into pace, and we let these people get on with their lives.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. This has been Trademark and Crozz Storm.
Yo.
Signing off. Peace.
Peace.